Once again, a very happy Mother's Day to all our moms here today, both here and watching on the internet. May each of you be blessed in a very special way today. Jesus says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. When I was a kid, my mom sometimes used a variant of that statement with me. If you loved me, you would clean up your room. Or if you loved me, you would do your homework. Any of you heard that before? Yeah? Did you ever use it on your own kids? Yeah. Well, I gotta confess, I really didn't like it when she said that to me, probably because I terribly misunderstood it until fairly recently. And so I never did say that to my kids, but here's why. I always knew instinctively that my mom's love for me was unconditional. It didn't matter what I did. There was nothing I could do that would prevent my mother from loving me, nothing. And it's also true that I loved my mom, and it was probably a little bit more conditionally than my mother loved me, but love can flow in two directions usually, and the truth is that there wasn't much that my mom could do that would prevent me from loving her. I mean, she was my mom. Of course I loved her. But I really didn't like that phrase, if you love me, you'll do this or that or whatever. And there were two reasons for that. First, it seemed to assume that my love for my mom was conditional, that if I didn't do as she asked, well, I didn't really love her. But the second reason that was because I was kind of a rotten kid. Not on purpose, I can assure you of that, but I was pretty dumb, and I was simply attracted to the things that I would eventually discourage my own kids from, and so I was frequently in trouble. And so my mom's request that I do something out of love for her made me feel quite guilty, because I knew that I couldn't quite live up to the behaviors that seemed required for proper love. And so today we hear Jesus say that if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. And I do need to tell you that Jesus is not trying to manipulate us into feeling guilty about living up to his high standards of behavior. God's love for us has no conditions, and he loves us wholly and completely and unconditionally. And there's nothing that we can do to make God stop loving us. On the other hand, we can decide to stop loving God, and because God does not want that to happen, he's telling us how we can make sure that it doesn't, and that's by keeping his commandments. And God's unconditional love for us doesn't mean that our love for him can be exercised and defined in whatever way we want either. And so Jesus is telling us that if we love him, we'll keep his commandments, which is really the proper way that we have, that our love for him should be expressed. And we have to love him for who he is and not for who we want him to be. Now that's because when we allow ourselves to be affected by sin and sinful behavior, well, we end up turning our eyes away from God and towards ourselves and other things. And Jesus is telling us that that's simply not love, even if we want it to be. If you tell your spouse or your parent or your child that you love that person, but then go through life acting like that person did not exist, or by destroying that person's work, your claim that you love that person means nothing. But God has given us some gifts, one of which is Jesus, who today is telling us about another gift, that would be the Holy Spirit, who will be sent to Jesus' disciples after Jesus ascends into heaven to be with the Father. And he's calling his disciples to keep his commandments out of love, because his commandments are his gift to us. They're a gift that will lead us down the path, and not just to a life in heaven forever, but they're also designed to assist us in a happy life here and now. And by the way, one of those commandments is that we love one another. And in calling his disciples to keep his commands, Jesus promises to send them what he calls another advocate who, like Jesus, will be there by their side to defend them or advocate for them. Now, obviously, he's talking about the Holy Spirit, and he's saying that while they won't see the Holy Spirit, they will know that he is there. And so Jesus is telling his disciples and us, who after a little time will no longer experience Jesus in the same way as when he was living on earth, that something very, very big is about to happen. But he's also encouraging them, and he says that despite his apparent departure, he's not going to abandon them because he'll be sending another person of the Holy Trinity, the Holy Spirit, who will remain with us and actually dwell within us. Now that is one amazing promise, God living within each and every one of us. And Jesus tells the disciples that his leaving and sending the Holy Spirit is to their advantage, because the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of the risen Jesus, will accomplish even more than Jesus did during his earthly ministry. And that's because in and through the Holy Spirit, Jesus himself will be present to all his disciples, including us, in a new and very intimate way. In and through the Holy Spirit, Jesus is somehow within us and among us. And the Spirit is with us even in dark and difficult times and in all our times of painful loss. And so we keep Jesus' commands because we love Jesus, who resides with us through the presence of the Holy Spirit, and who, within us, guides and steers us towards those actions and behaviors that demonstrate the love that actually lives within us. And as we move forward with the Holy Spirit within us, we also begin to learn something of God's perspective. It's the Holy Spirit who enables us to see as God sees, to know as God knows, and to understand as God understands. In this way, we don't act alone, but are accompanied by God's ever-present Spirit. And if we love him, we'll keep his commands. And the Holy Spirit will aid and assist us as he'll be there every step of the way, living within us. Once again, happy Mother's Day to all our moms. It's your example, especially, that helps us to understand the love that God has for all his children.